The sound tore through the stillness of dusk, low, mournful, and impossibly familiar. Sarah Chen froze by the window of a rural Thai clinic as the call echoed again, rising from somewhere deep within the jungle. Her father lay dying 3 floors below, his pulse faint beneath the monitors that blinked in quiet defiance of hope. And yet, when that cry reached her ears, she knew it wasn't just noise. It was searching for someone. From the tree line, a massive elephant emerged, her grey hide glistening gold under the fading light. She moved slowly, but with purpose, her trunk raised high, releasing another sound that vibrated through the courtyard. The elephant's left ear carried a deep, crescent-shaped notch. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. That mark, she knew it from an old photograph. It couldn't be possible. And yet, it was. The elephant her father had saved 12 years earlier had found them again. The animal stopped beneath the hospital window, towering over the courtyard fence, and lifted her gaze upward. Her eyes locked on the 3rd-floor room where Dr. Michael Chen struggled for breath. Then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, the heart monitor spiked. A failing, irregular rhythm became strong and steady, as if something unseen had reached across the gap between them. Whispers rippled through the staff. Cameras recorded. Awe filled the air. For minutes, no one dared to move. The elephant rumbled softly, a deep, resonant vibration that was felt more than heard. It was the sound of recognition. Sarah pressed her trembling hand to the glass as tears ran down her face. The impossible had found them. That night, the footage would spread across the world. But to truly understand what happened in that courtyard, why an elephant crossed 40 miles of wilderness to reach a dying man, we need to go back to where it all began. To a scorching morning in Kanchanaburi province, 12 years earlier, when a desperate cry in the jungle changed 2 lives forever. Dr. Michael Chen hadn't planned to stay in Thailand. The veterinary conference in Bangkok had ended days earlier, and his return flight to Seattle was already booked. But something in him resisted leaving. Maybe it was curiosity, or that quiet intuition he had learned to trust. Instead of flying home, he traveled west toward the remote Kanchanaburi province, volunteering at a modest wildlife rescue outpost run by an old colleague. It was meant to be a short detour before home. He didn't realize it would define his life. That morning, the air shimmered with heat when the station door burst open. Somchai, a ranger known for his stoicism, stumbled inside, gasping. "Baby elephant, trap, mother dead." The words hit Michael like a hammer. He grabbed his emergency kit and followed the ranger into the jungle. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, until even the cicadas fell silent. Then came a faint sound, high and trembling, a cry of pain and panic. They found her at the edge of a clearing, a calf, barely 2 years old, trapped by a steel cable that had cut deep into her leg. Blood soaked the ground beneath her. The smell of rot from her mother's nearby body hung in the air. Michael froze. For a moment, he could only watch the small creature struggle, her strength fading with every movement. Then the calf lifted her head and met his eyes. The look was unmistakable, fear, confusion, and something that felt like a plea. Michael knelt slowly, his voice calm and rhythmic. "It's all right," he murmured. "I'm here." Somchai warned him to stay back, but Michael couldn't. Logic gave way to instinct. He approached, every step a negotiation of trust. The calf stopped thrashing, trembling as if listening to the tone of his voice. Between them passed something silent yet undeniable, a recognition of intent, of safety. It was the moment the bond began. Before we return to that blazing jungle and the rescue that defied reason, consider this. Do you believe animals remember the people who saved them? Do you believe compassion can leave a mark strong enough to outlive time itself? If you do, or if you're curious to find out, stay with us, because the story that follows will prove that some memories never fade and that gratitude has its own way of finding a path home. Michael moved cautiously through the jungle, the sound of the calf's cries guiding him. When he reached the clearing, the scene nearly stole his breath. The young elephant lay on her side, the steel cable biting into swollen flesh, flies clouding the wound. Her breaths came shallow and fast. He had seen pain before, but never like this. He raised his hands, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "Easy, girl, easy." The calf stilled, watching him. Behind him, Somchai whispered that this was suicide. But Michael wasn't hearing him. He studied the snare, rusted, thick, pulled tight by days of struggle. Without immediate treatment, the calf would die before sunrise. There was no time to transport her. He would have to operate here, with nothing but what he carried. He unpacked his kit, antibiotics, gauze, a single vial of sedative meant for smaller animals. Not nearly enough. Sweat stung his eyes as he positioned the bolt cutters around the wire. "Hold on," he whispered. "I'm going to help you." The cable snapped with a metallic ping that echoed through the trees. The calf convulsed, trunk lashing wildly, but didn't strike him. She froze, trembling, watching him with wide eyes full of pain and trust. He poured his remaining water over the wound, cleaning the gash, then dusted antibiotic powder over raw flesh. The air smelled of blood and earth. Each time she flinched, he murmured reassurance. "It's okay. You're safe." Somchai could only stare in disbelief. "She listens to you," he whispered. Hours passed. The jungle dimmed into gold and shadow. Michael worked tirelessly, binding the wound, injecting antibiotics, using cloth torn from his own shirt as bandages. When it was done, he collapsed beside her, drained but unable to leave. She reached out, curling her trunk around his wrist, and held it there. The gesture was gentle, deliberate, an act of recognition. As darkness settled, he sent Somchai for supplies and stayed behind. Alone with the orphaned calf, he listened to the jungle breathe. She moved closer, her warmth pressing against him. When predators stirred in the distance, she shifted, placing her trunk protectively over his chest. Under a sky full of unfamiliar stars, a silent promise was made between them, one that neither time nor death would break. He named her Kannika, the Thai word for golden flower. And in that clearing, 2 lives began to heal. At dawn, Somchai returned with 4 rangers and a makeshift stretcher. They worked silently, understanding the urgency without needing words. The sanctuary was 12 miles away, and the path between was no path at all, just dense jungle and rising heat. Michael sedated Kannika lightly and spoke to her as if she were listening. "We're taking you home now," he said softly. The men lifted, and the long journey began. They trudged through mud and vines, the jungle clawing at their progress. Twice, they stopped to rest, and each time Michael placed a hand on her side, feeling the shallow rhythm of her breathing. Crossing a swollen river nearly ended it all. One ranger slipped, and the stretcher tilted dangerously. Even under sedation, Kannika sensed the fall. Her trunk thrashed, eyes wide. Michael lunged forward, gripping the frame. "I've got you!" he shouted. She stilled at his voice. They regained footing and continued, soaked, shaken, but alive. Hours later, they reached the elephant. Nature sanctuary. Dr. Siripon Watana examined the wound and shook her head gravely. "The infection is severe," she said. "Even if she survives, she'll limp for life." But Michael refused to accept defeat. He stayed, calling his partners back home to postpone everything. For 3 weeks, he worked beside Siripon, cleaning, treating, talking to Kannika every day. On day 12, her fever spiked to 106 degrees. Michael stayed by her side through the night, pressing cool cloths to her skin, whispering encouragement. By morning, her breathing steadied. She opened her eyes and wrapped her trunk weakly around his arm. "Good girl," he said through tears. By the third week, Kannika stood. Her leg trembled, her steps uneven, but she was walking. Against all odds, she had survived. The sanctuary staff watched in awe as she played with other calves, her spirit slowly returning. At dusk, Michael leaned against the fence, exhausted but smiling. Kannika reached her trunk toward him, touching his face, with gentle curiosity, as if memorizing him all over again. He didn't know it then, but she was. 7 weeks after the rescue, the day of goodbye arrived. The morning light spilled over the sanctuary like gold on water. Michael sat by the fence as Kannika approached, her limp barely noticeable now. She reached him and pressed her trunk against his chest. "You remember," he whispered, his throat tight. He had to return home. His daughter, Sarah, had forgiven his absence, but work waited and life called. Yet every instinct screamed to stay. "You'll be safe here," he said quietly. "You'll have a long life." Kannika seemed to understand. Her trunk moved over his hands, his shoulders, his face, memorizing every detail of the man who had freed her. He rose slowly, resting his forehead against her trunk. "I'll never forget you," he promised. She released a low rumble that made his eyes sting. It was the sound of goodbye. He left before dawn the next morning, unable to face her awake. As the truck rolled away, the jungle broke its silence. Kannika's trumpet echoed through the hills, long, aching, and unmistakable. Michael closed his eyes. He didn't need to look back to know it was her. For 2 years, updates came regularly, photos, letters, short videos. Then they stopped. Staff changed, contact was lost, and silence took its place. Yet even as life moved forward, he couldn't escape the memory of that sound in the distance. Sometimes in dreams, he saw her again, touching his face, eyes full of something human. Neither of them knew it, but the promise made that morning would one day be fulfilled in a way neither science nor logic could ever explain. 12 years later, on a stormy October night in Seattle, Michael woke to crushing pain in his chest. The world tilted and everything faded to black. He awoke in a hospital, machines beeping, Sarah at his side. "It's your heart," she said softly. They did everything they could. The doctors gave him months, maybe weeks. But Michael wasn't ready to die staring at sterile walls. "I want to go back," he told Sarah, "to Thailand." She refused at first, terrified it would kill him. But when she saw the determination in his fading eyes, she relented. "Then I'm going with you." The journey drained him. By the time they reached the Kanchanaburi clinic, he was barely conscious. But when the doors opened and the humid air rushed in, he smiled weakly. "Smells like life," he whispered. His room overlooked the jungle, a quiet symmetry to the place where his story began. Days passed in silence. He slept more each day. Then one night, his eyes opened, clear and urgent. "Sarah," he said, gripping her hand, "find Kannika. I need to know she's alive." Sarah searched tirelessly, scouring old records, sanctuary lists, online archives. 2 days later, she found it. Kannika, female Asian elephant, left ear notch, transferred to Kanchanaburi Preserve in 2019. Still alive, still thriving. When she told him, tears filled his eyes. "She made it," he whispered. "She lived." For the first time in weeks, his heart monitor steadied. Sarah thought the story had finally found its peace, but destiny had one final chapter left to write. Outside, unseen beyond the rain, a faint trumpet echoed through the valley. The jungle, it seemed, had been listening. The next afternoon, thunder rolled over the hills as a guard ran into Dr. Presert's office. "Elephant!" he shouted, "coming from the jungle!" Moments later, the sound filled the air again, low, commanding, impossible to ignore. They rushed outside as a colossal shape broke through the trees. Kannika. Her skin glistened with rain, her movements heavy but purposeful. She crossed the clearing with unshakable intent, eyes locked on the clinic building. Sarah felt the world slow around her. "It's her," she breathed. "Dad, it's really her." Kannika stopped beneath the window of Michael's room and lifted her trunk, releasing a call that shook the air. Inside, Michael's monitors began to change. Weak lines turning strong, shallow breaths deepening. Sarah wheeled his bed closer to the glass. "She found you," she whispered. Michael pressed his hand against the window pane. "Kannika," he said softly, "you remembered." Below, the elephant rumbled, a vibration that trembled through the floor and into his chest. It wasn't sound, it was memory. Dr. Prasert watched the monitors, stunned. "His vitals are improving," he whispered. But Michael's eyes were only on Kannika. She swayed gently, her trunk tracing the air toward the sound of his voice. It was the same movement she'd made 12 years earlier, in a jungle clearing that now felt very close. For nearly an hour they stayed that way, man and elephant, window and courtyard, heart and memory. Nurses cried silently. Researchers filmed in. Outside, rain fell in silver threads, each drop reflecting something sacred. When night came, Kannika folded her legs and stayed. She refused to leave. The preserve staff arrived and agreed to let her remain. "She knows why she's here," their director said quietly. For 3 weeks she returned every morning, and every morning Michael lived. On his final night, he turned to Sarah and whispered, "She gave me life twice." His hand fell still in hers. At 6:47 a.m., his monitors went silent. Outside, Kannika lifted her trunk and released one long, sorrowful call, then turned and disappeared into the jungle. For weeks after Michael's passing, Kannika's herd was seen pausing at the edge of the forest, facing the direction of the clinic. Researchers documented the behavior but couldn't explain it. Some said it was coincidence. Others believed it was mourning. Sarah scattered part of her father's ashes in the jungle clearing where he had once freed a frightened calf. The forest pulsed with life, birds, wind, and somewhere in the distance, the faint rumble of elephants. Standing there, she understood what her father had always known. Compassion leaves a trace that time cannot erase. Michael Chen had given life to an elephant who would one day return that gift. And in that final act, when a dying man was found by the very being he once saved, the world was reminded of something profound. Love, once given, never disappears. It waits, silent and patient, until the moment it's needed most.